Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of TCG Talk, back today with another video, and in today's video we're going to be going over the week 2 meta results for ProQuest season, as well as giving you a snapshot of the whole ProQuest meta as a whole. I have an article here in front of me, and I also have a spreadsheet that I made kind of with week 2, week 1, and then the total numbers. So it took me a little bit to aggregate this data for you together. So normally I'm not one that's like, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. I don't normally say that at the beginning of the video. I always say it at the end. But for this one, it took me a while to aggregate that data. So if you like this type of content, please leave a like, or a comment at the very least. Let me know like it was worth the time. If you're not as interested in this content, also tell me, because then I won't take the time to do it. But regardless, we'll go over it. So my buddy Parker made this article, finally written article for ProQuest Season 2. We'll dive right into it, taking a look at the metagame. One thing I want to say, and this is something I don't think anyone from LSS watches my videos, but if you do in some way, shape, or form, I know Parker probably gets the data from y'all. Like, I haven't talked to him about it, but I'm assuming Parker doesn't add all this up by himself. I'm assuming he gets it from LSS. But in the article, it says that over 3,865 players attended week 2 of ProQuest. And then at the bottom of their article, they have their player hero chart, and if you add all of these heroes up to, or all these players up together, it equals 2,816. So the players, I don't know, or hero representation. Now that, if the players was lower than the heroes, that would actually make sense, because some players are playing the hero twice in like 2 events. But the difference between the players in the data sheet right here and the players in the article was 1,000. So it's pretty significant. Just something to keep in mind when it comes to consistency and people trying to track data and stuff like that. But to each their own. It's not like a negative. I'm not trying to make a deal out of it. I'm just saying it's kind of interesting. Regardless, getting into the metagame, similar to last week, except with a couple minor changes. Fi is still number 1. In week 1 metagame, Fi made up about 15% of the meta, and this week he made 16%. So pretty consistent there. We have 4 heroes in Oldheim, Icelander, Dromai, and Dash, all set time for second at 10%. The biggest key takeaway from that is Oldheim went from 7% meta representation to 10% meta representation, which is actually a pretty big jump. He was 5th last week in the total meta representation, and this week he was tied for second. So kind of, obviously more Oldheim, probably people seeing the success of Oldheim, maybe a couple Bravos also that weren't doing as well week 1, probably switched to Oldheim week 2, because even week 1, Bravo was 7% of the meta, and week 2, he was still 7% of the meta, so maybe not as much, but regardless, that's kind of where we're at, and then it all rounded off from there. In contrast to week 1 metadata, we have not shifted too severely in one direction or the other. Each hero has maintained a respectable showing as Loyalists locked in to prove their hero deserves a spot in the top ranks. Fi is kind of the dominant in the meta, each representing a strong percent of the metagame. 56% of the metagame was represented by 5 heroes. That leaves a staggering 46% divvied up from the adult heroes. And we'll kind of get into that as I show you the spreadsheet here in a second. For the ProQuest top 8, pretty substantial. Nothing too crazy, but Fi's 18%. Oldheim was 14% of the top 8s. Icelander was 12%, and then you have Dromai at 10%, which I think was a surprising one, to be honest. Dash at 8, Dorinthia at 7, Bravo at 8, Briar at 6, and Lexi at 5. So I think the key takeaway from this is Dromai. If you look at the week 1 data, Dromai was at about 9% of the meta, and then made up 9% of the top 8s. In week 2, she was about 10% of the meta, or 9 point something, and 10% of top 8. So she rose a lot. Not a lot, but she rose consistently over week 1 to week 2, so that's kind of like the biggest thing to take away there. But once again, Fi proving to be the rebellious force in lore and game, such as a strong showing of 5 players and consistent aggressive stance. It's no surprise he held majority of top 8s. Oldheim at 14% was also kind of a big one. But if you look at this, basically Oldheim, Icelander, and Fi made up 44% of top 8s. So almost half of top 8s were 3 heroes. And if you add in Dromai, over half of the top 8 meta was 4 heroes specifically. So Kind of gives you an idea, like, yes, we have a diverse meta, but it's also pretty top heavy, and it kind of shows you like the bans and why they targeted the bans. And I'll really show you why they targeted the bans here in a second. And I'll kind of give you more clarity on why I think because some people, like, when the Belittle ban and Amulet of Ice ban and all Hypo ban, all that came out, and the Winter's Wheel ban, people were like, why now, right? Like, why not wait till after ProQuest season? I know it gives people for the calling indie more time, but like, other than like giving people for the calling more time, why would they do it now? And my answer is the conversion rate that they got in the top 8, and I'll show that here in a second. So honorable mentions were that 3 Azalea and 3 Levia players who managed to take these underdog heroes into top 8. So not as much top 8 representation as before, but still pretty significant. And then we get into wins. Similar to week 1 meta day, we see that Phi, Oldham, and Icelander continue to be the commanding forces for week 2. From week to week, these 3 have been asserting dominance. Just last week, we had 14 different heroes securing Living Legend points in week 2, an impressive feat we'd never seen in ProQuest season before. So, like the article, like Parker wrote, out of the wins, the only heroes that did not pick up wins in week 2 were Azalea, Katsu, who picked up a win last week but not this week, and Levia. Arachne picked up 2 wins. It was the same player, the Skyfish player, with his fatigue list. He picked up 2 wins, so congrats to him. One noticeable fact is that Dorinthia and Dash were tied at 7.83% of wins as we close week 1, but this week some ties have shifted. Dorinthia's wins were cut in half, while Dash's almost doubled. That's just, Dash is a very strong deck right now. I think people getting the hang of how to play it into the meta. This could be evidence of the ice tax from the 2, right? Like, it does hurt Dorinthia a little bit more with the ice tax. But Dash is able to play through the ice a little bit easier with the amount of blues that she has. As promised, here's the full data set for week 2. Explore top 8 conversions. And like I said, I'm not trying to be negative here. I know that the writers and like there's probably a ton of people working their tails off behind the scene, but the data does not match what's up here in these graphs. It doesn't match as far as total number most of the time. And that's all I'll say on that. I'm not going to harp on it. I don't want this to be a negative video. It's just I think they need to figure that out when they put these out, because I just don't want another prism issue where we had like, are they living legend, are they not? And the reason is because players look at one data set, says one thing, another player data set says another thing. As long as they have wins down, it's not that big a deal. But it's just something to take a look. But anyway, we'll look at week 2 data here. I made the spreadsheet. I'm not going to make it available just for security reasons. Maybe one day if I do a Patreon, I'll keep it on. Over here, I'll get to this in a second. But basically, let's see if we can zoom up just a little bit here for y'all. Okay, cool. So there are some that went high, low, but like I only highlighted things that I think were significant or like more than 1% basically of a difference from week 1. So of the players overall in week 1, according to the spreadsheets, we had 2,300 players participate week 1. And week 2, we had 2,800. So that's pretty good. Seeing more people play week 2 is pretty awesome because like it shows that like even if people lost, they came back and played again. And we also probably had some extra additional players. So that's really great to see. For top 8s, the biggest key points is Dash. Dash went from 65 top 8s to 84 top 8s. That's a pretty big percentage. But she did go down in overall percentage of top 8s a little bit. Like how much she made up of the top 8 meta. But overall, like having more top 8s is really good. Dorinthia, her number of top 8s went from 54 to 67. And then Dromai's top 8s went from 74 to 100. So those are like the big ones. And then the other big one is Oldham. Oldham went from 83 top 8s to 139 top 8s, almost doubling the amount of top 8s that he got. Like we only had 500 more players, which, you know, doing math on the fly right now, right? If you do 2316, right, into 2816, which is what it was, right? To see like the difference in percentage of like how much they grew, that's like a pretty significant increase, right? And so, but it's not a double increase. And for Oldham to double his top 8s over the course of week 1 to week 2 is pretty nutty. I think it's a telling of people realize the power of the deck. A lot of people probably saw the week 1 stats, and that shifted the metagame a little bit, but overall, Oldham had significant. additions. So in wins, Arachne picked up its first 2 wins, so obviously that one's going to be in green. Bravo went from 3 wins to 7 wins, which is pretty good. Azalea still didn't pick up a win. Briar stayed about the same. Dash stayed about the same. Dash went from 9 to 15 wins, so that is significant. Dorinthia kind of, I didn't highlight, but Dorinthia went from 9 wins to 4 wins, which is like her wins got cut in half, as the article said. Germine went from 8 to 8. Fine Icelander didn't change too much. Kano had a win both weeks. Katsu, who had a win week 1, did not have a win week 2. Lexi doubled her wins or tripled her wins, going from 2 to 6. Oldheim went from 26 to 28, so staying with consistency. And then finally, Reinar went from 3 wins to 8 wins. So that's kind of like your big wins. So your big winners this week were like Reinar, Lexi, Bravo, and Arachne. Whereas your losers were Dorinthia and Katsu in a way, just because they didn't pick up a win. So percentage of the meta, like the only big difference in none of these numbers as far as percentage of the meta shifted more than 1%, except for Oldheim. Oldheim went from 7% of the meta to 10% of the meta. I rounded off these numbers just because it was easier. I didn't do exact to the point. I basically did to the 10th degree, so forgive me for that one. But he went from 7% of the meta to 10% of the meta. So that's pretty significant, especially with the number of players increasing. Like, if players increasing, your percentage of the meta probably should technically go down or stay the same because it's just a larger player base. So, like if there's 10 people in the meta and he makes up 2, and the next time there's 30 people in the meta and he makes up 6, right? Like, it should technically scale evenly, but it didn't. It went up 3%, which is pretty significant. So, percentage of top 8s. What's the big thing here? So Dash is kind of the biggest loser. She had 8% of the top 8s. Or not 8. It wasn't the biggest loser. She just kind of stayed the same. And the reason I put her at red is because she technically had more top 8s and more representation and more wins, going from 9 to 15. But her overall percentage didn't really move, which means, like, yes, there were more players, but, like, they basically did about the same. It's not really a big loser. You could technically reset this. It's not that big a deal, but it's just a minor point. Phi went up pretty highly. I wanted to keep that. It wasn't that he made a change. It's just the fact that Phi made up 18% of the top 8s is pretty substantial, along with Oldheim making up 14%. So 2 heroes alone made up exactly a third of our top 8s for the most part, or just under a third. So that's pretty crazy. Over week 2. And then percentage of wins, the biggest losers were Bravo and Dorinthia. Bravo went from 2% of wins, or I don't know why it says red. I'm stupid. Bravo was one of the bigger winners. Bravo had about 5% of the total wins, whereas last week he had 2. Dorinthia was at 3% this week, whereas she was at 7% last week, so she definitely did go down. Dash went from 7% to 11%, so Dash went up. And then Reinar went from 2% to 6%. So Bravo, Dash, and Reinar kind of went up pretty significantly, whereas Dorinthia dropped in percentage of total wins. And then finally, like, some of the bigger things over here, this is where I want to get into why they banned heroes, okay? And we'll get into the total metagame here in a second. But T8 conversion percentage, right? So this basically means out of all the players in that hero, what is the percentage that they got to top 8? So that means, like, out of 48% of Oldheims who entered the metagame in week 2 got in the top 8. And in week 1, 49% of Oldheims in the metagame. So that means over the course of 2 weeks of ProQuest season, as you can see right here, 48% of Oldheims got in the top 8. That's pretty substantial. And if you look at the 3 heroes that they hit, over the course of 2 weeks, 3 of these heroes had over a 40% conversion rate in the top 8 for their players. The reason that's significant is because look at the amount of times that those heroes were played, right? Like, Phi was played 800 times. Like, he made up 15% of the meta and had a 40% conversion rate. Oldheim made up 8% of the meta, had a 48% conversion rate. So a hero that only makes up 8% of the meta, which is 4th in total meta representation, had almost a 50-50 conversion in the top 8. And that's why you had to take a look at these heroes, because I'm not a card game connoisseur on every single percentage point, but I don't think any hero in the game should basically have a 50-50 conversion into a top 8 of a tournament, regardless of size or whatever, like across the world. Like, regardless of meta, regardless of size, regardless of whatever, this hero made up 50% of got in the top 8 50% of the time it was played, and that's just a little bit too high. And on top of that, like if you look at week 2, with the conversion rates, right? 48% getting in the top 8 for Oldheim, and then his win conversion actually went down a little bit. But the fact that 1 out of every 10 Oldheims week 2, and 15% of Oldheims who entered the meta completely in week 1 won, and then 10% of Oldheims who entered the meta week 2 won. So, and the only reason this is down is because the Oldheims were probably playing each other, right? If Oldheims made up 14% of the top 8 completely, that means that they literally were probably just playing each other, which is why their win conversion went down. But 1 out of every 5 Oldheims that made top 8 in week 2 won, right? So like if you got in the top 8 with Oldheim, just statistically 1 in every 5 of you would win your event, and that's counting ones that play each other and everything else. Of note, like not too crazy on the top 3 heroes. Dash had an 18% top 8 to win percentage, which is really good. So 18% of the time Dash got in the top 8, they won the event. Rhinar is huge. 21% of Rhinars in week 2 that got in the top 8 won their event because they had 8 wins and 38 top 8s. So pretty good percentage, similar to Oldheim. So that's really, really good. So over the course of week 2, as we look at this, the most represented was Fi, Oldheim, and actually Dromai. Dromai was the 3rd most represented deck at 284 players. Most top 8s was 181. Oldheim had 139, Icelander 123, and the most wins, Oldheim at 28, 24, and 22, respectively. Best T8 conversion percentage over week 2 is 48%, 44%, and 40%. And top 8 to win conversion, obviously Arachne, because only 6 of them made top 8 and 2 of them won, so it's going to be skewed, but it's still whatever. Rhinar actually was 2nd, and Oldheim was 3rd. So looking at the total metagame here, I'm not going to go through this crazy, but basically you can take a screenshot of this if you want. Excuse me. Fi has been played 806 times. So over the course of 2 weeks, Fi has made up 15% of the meta. Icelander has made up 10% of the meta at 531 players. Dash has made up 10% of the meta at 531 players. It's funny, according to the data sheets, Dash and Icelander have been played the exact same amount of times, which is really funny. Oldheim's been played 455 times, so he's comes in at 3rd, basically, at 8.9% of the meta, or 4th, actually, because Dromai's been played 506 times. So Oldheim is the 4th most represented deck. However, he is the 3rd most represented deck in percentage of top 8s. And he also has a number 1 T8 conversion percentage and the number 1 win conversion percentage. So over 2 weeks, Oldheim is at an 11% win conversion percentage. That means 11% of all Oldheims that have played in the first 2 weeks of ProQuest have won an event. Over 1 in every 10, which is pretty nutty. And the top 8 to win percentage is pretty high at 24% as well. So you can see like these top 3 heroes and why they're so polarizing and why they decided to make a change now. If you look at it, right, like their meta percentage is pretty high, but these numbers right here is what matters, and these numbers is why they had to make a change. The ones that I'm highlighting, like the fact that they all 3 almost had a 50-50 like top 8 conversion percentage is pretty nuts. Of note, on the funny side, Azalea still doesn't have a win, and Levia still doesn't have a win. The only 2 heroes that do not have a win so far. Azalea's only had 10 top 8s. Levia's only had 6 top 8s. So, like, it's each their own. Katsu only has 1 win with 25 top 8s. Kano has 2 wins, so they just barely got hit in there. But, yeah, over the course of the first 2 weeks, Fi is the most represented hero, followed by Icelander and then Dash. Dromai is close behind, right, at 506. Most top 8s, Fi, Icelander, Oldheim. Most wins, Oldheim, Icelander, Fi. Top 8 conversion percentage that's best is Oldheim, Icelander, Fi. And then top 8 to win conversion percentage that's best is actually Oldheim, Rhinar, and Dash. So Rhinar's doing really good once they get in top 8, it seems like. But overall, hopefully you like this. Hopefully it made sense. If there's any other questions you have on any data I didn't cover, please let me know. I'm going to keep this on me. I'm going to be doing this for week 3 as well and giving you all an entire ProQuest season snapshot. But congrats to Parker. Good job on the amazing article as always. Let me know what you think of the ban suspension. Let me know what you think of the metagame and how it's paying out. And yeah, hopefully this was a good video. If you liked it, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. If you didn't like it, please let me know. I'll definitely not, well, I'll still take the time because it's fun for me, but I won't make a video on this like if it's just too granular for you guys. But I feel like you all want to see this data. But yeah, hopefully I'll have a great rest of your week. Stay safe, and I'll see y'all next time on TCG Talk. Thank y'all so much.